Welcome to the Dizzy Skeleton. I'm DK, and today we're looking at Monsters of the Multiverse. Now, before we dive into the Monsters of the Multiverse, just want to let you know that you cannot purchase this book currently. The only way you can get this book is through buying the Rules expansion. Now, click up here, you can look at my Rules expansion, the gift set that they have released. It has the alternate covers. This is a variant of that cover. This is the $160 version of the Rules expansion instead of the $200 version of the Rules expansion. Same books, alternate covers. Now, this book will be released later this year in May, so we got a couple months ahead of us before this book does come out officially on the shelf by itself. If you're looking for that, then you'll be able to buy it individually. If you want it now, you're going to have to get that gift set. Good thing though, if you already own Morning Cannons or Volos, hopefully both, you already have almost all the information in this book. Now, before I get started and go dive deeper into looking at exactly what's included in this book, I do want to say that because it does have a lot of that already out in print, I'm not a fan of the book. Now, the whole Rules expansion to me isn't a great buy. It's definitely a collector's buy. If you don't have the books, it's definitely kind of a cool thing to get. It has different covers, alternate covers, this kind of reflective surface cover that it has on it. All of the books are just reprints, slightly updated errata, some updated rules here, and I'll go into that when I dive a little bit deeper into the book. But for the most part, I mean, the book has really been released for several years now. This is just a reprinting of material so that we move over into the new evolution of Dungeons and Dragons. As far as the book itself, it's not too bad. It does even say here on the back that it's compiling and updating the monsters from Volo's Guide to Monsters and Morning Cannon's Tome of Foes. It also includes races from plenty of the books. Not just Volos or Morning Cannons, but also others that they've released along the way, specifically the Genasi, which haven't been released in any book so far. So, without further ado, let's go ahead, open it up, take a look. Alright, so here's the cover. We'll just take a look at the outside of the book. It does kind of have this sheen, this kind of hollow, you know, the old school kind of holographic to some parts of the book. So I mean, you can kind of pick it up in the light. That is a sheen on the book, so that's not just, you can see the gloss reflection over here, but you can tell that this is flat matte color, and then it has a sheen, you know, laid into the actual printing of the book. So the outside of the book looks nice. I like it. I don't really care for this. You know, I really liked that alternate cover that they did for these, the all white cover. I just thought it was a lot neater, a lot cleaner overall. And you know, this one just looks like a standard book, but it just kind of has that that holographic look to it. All right, so let's take a look inside. So right away here, looking at the table of contents. So we're only dealing in 2 chapters here. And then I believe there is 1 appendix. Yep, so 2 chapters here. We're looking at fantastical races. So they've taken all the races that they think, I'm not really sure how they decided which races to take. I'm assuming any race that isn't designed for a particular setting. So setting neutral races are placed into this book. So basically anything that's not in the player's handbook has been added in this book that they would consider, you know, part of their normal 5th edition rules. After that, then we go into the bestiary. Now the bestiary is fairly long. It has all of the creatures from both Volo's Guide to Monsters and Morning Cannon's Tome of Foes in their entirety. So you're looking at basically everything that they've printed in their supplemental books. This doesn't include the setting books. Okay, so just taking a look here, then at the races. So I'm just going to take a look at a couple of the races that they've made changes to. Right off the bat here, chapter 1, we're looking at creating a character. And they already give you this. So from now on, the ability score increases. When determining the ability scores, you will choose one score to increase by 2, increase a different score by 1, or increase 3 different scores by 1. So they've kind of made it official in this book. It's part of the, you know, the expansion rules. This is kind of their new rule set that they're rolling out. I kind of like that. So all of the following races, they will not have any ability score increases tied to them. Also, we're looking at the languages here. So it says you get common and then one other language. So no longer tying, you know, your race to language. They're not tying it to your ability scores. They're just giving you the racial traits that what are really species traits of a different kind of species, which I like the term species over race, just because it scientifically makes more sense. So anyway, here we go. So we're looking at, you know, we got the Aarakocra and the Asmar they've added in here. Now, they've barely really changed some of these things in here. So instead of the Asmar and its sub-races, they've just broken down, you know, the Necrotic Shroud, the Radiant Consumption, and the Radiant Soul into 3 different abilities that you could choose. So they're not doing the sub-races. Maybe they're going to try to get rid of the sub-races entirely. I mean, I'm not mad about it. The sub-races kind of seemed a little, I don't know, weird to me, categorical to me. I kind of like this a lot better. So another change, they brought the Changeling here. So the Changeling was originally something that was in Eberron. When I played 3.5, it was introduced in Eberron, and I have never seen it in another book that wasn't an Eberron book. So it's interesting that they chose the Changeling to be kind of a system neutral, or a setting neutral rather, type of individuals, type of species that you could be. But I'm here for it. I mean, that's cool. I think the Changeling is a great addition. Some other changes that they made with the Changeling is that it is a Fae. So you are going to see some of the creature types in here are just straight up Fae. They've changed it. They're not doing just the humanoids anymore. I've always had some of this changed in my games. If you're a tiefling, you are a humanoid and a fiend. So things that would affect Fae, I would assume would affect this creature. You are not a humanoid. It does not say that. So they've definitely enhanced the Ganassi here. Before, some of the spells that they had with them were kind of meh, and they didn't have a lot. So I think each different element had one spell per person. But now it looks like they get two spells, one at 3rd level, a cantrip, and then 2 spells. So, you know, we're looking at the Earth Genasi. It at one point only had Pass Without Trace, but now it knows Blade Ward and Pass Without Trace. I mean, that's pretty good. It's not too bad. The Fire Genasi has Burning Hands, Produce Flame, and Flame Blade. So they definitely enhanced them. They've given them more magic, which is pretty nice. Just making those small differences. They also allow you to choose medium or small, so you don't have to necessarily be a human Genasi. You could have been a halfling that had that in their line, or just a small creature in general. It doesn't even have to be anything of ancestries that are mixed or anything like that. So we have the Harengon over here. Now the Harengon first came out in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and in the UA, so the Unearthed Arcana, it's the Wizards of the Coast playtest material. They had released a Hobgoblin variant. I believe it was Hobgoblin of the Feywild, they called it, or something like that. So originally in real world Earth lore, hobgoblins are some kind of fey creature, some kind of like fairy creature. I'm not completely sure exactly on the lore of it or on the myth of it, but I am aware that, you know, if you've ever seen the Spiderwick Chronicles, there's a hobgoblin, and most of those creatures are kind of, you know, fairy or fairy adjacent, very Feywild kind of vibes. So the hobgoblins were in there. So they tried to give them, you know, a Feywild version of that. But it looks like they stepped away from that when they produced that original Wild Beyond the Witchlight book. But now that they've released this book, it looks like we've stepped back into the Feywild kind of thing here. So we got Fey Ancestry, Fey Gift, a lot of things about being Fey. Even the lore up here, up on top, has to deal with Fey. Now, originally the hobgoblins were made to be really militaristic, and I can see where they would take that away, because the militaristic thing, you know, it's more of a culture and not an ancestry or something you would come from your species. Whereas, you know, being part Fey or being descended from Fey is definitely going to leave a lasting impression. So something they've done to the kobold and the orc, two of the only races in all of 5th edition to receive negative modifiers to their ability scores. I believe the kobold received the negative strength and the orc received the negative intelligence. Now the kobold is, period, full stop, my favorite race. I love kobolds. I got introduced to them in 3.0 really, and then 3.5. Deacon was from Neverwinter Nights. He was a kobold bard. I had the Races of the Dragon book from 3.0. They were just like small little dragons that built traps and kind of did little, you know, sneaky things. They were sort of like halflings, but dragon in nature. I really liked that. And when they were originally released, they were made basically to be little cowards. They weren't very cool. It kind of hurt a little bit that my favorite race was made to be the coward race, the little shrivel up into a ball and gain advantage for crying race, which was a real ability if you go back and look at the original Kobold release. Now, they've re-released the Kobold. They've tied it more to the dragons, give it its own legacy, kind of give it what it deserves as far as, you know, being a race just like any of the other races, and instead of, you know, making it something lesser than, you know, all of the other races. And that goes for the orcs too. I don't mind orcs. Orcs are cool. I played a half orc, was my first character ever. And orc is adjacent obviously to that. And it was kind of shitty that they gave them negative modifiers. I just didn't understand it when everyone in 5th edition had all positives. The last race here I'm going to look at is the Tritons. I think the Tritons are a really cool race, and I think they should be brought more to the forefront. I think it's hard to mix, you know, they get caught in the mix between, you know, water genasi and Tritons. Two very different things in the lore, but appearance-wise and kind of like vibe that they give off, you know, they're both from elemental plane of water. They're both usually blue skin with green or blue hair. So it's kind of weird that they would fit two things in the same slot, but nonetheless, here we go. Just some things I want to point out about it is that they've changed the spell selection here. So they originally had a custom spell. I'm not against this. I like that they had their own custom spell. But, you know, they want to make it a little bit easier so you don't have to get Volos just to get that one spell that the Tritons have. But the big thing I want to point out is Dark Vision. Finally, our Guardians of the Depths can see in the dark. However, they've been doing it the whole entire time. No one was really sure. But finally, they do. All right, so the Bestiary. Now, we could really go through this, and if I get enough comments down below that are of people asking me to compare this book you know, directly to Volos and Mordenkainen's, I will go through the books and I will point out, you know, as much of the changed information that I can. But I mean, just looking at it here, the bestiary has changed. You know, they've changed how the spellcasting works. They've changed in the stat block. They've changed how they've organized the monsters, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But most of the stuff is the same. What they've really done is just gather all of the creatures into one spot. You don't have to go through all these 2 books. You could sit down potentially with the rules expansion, the player's handbook at your table, and have basically everything you need, and the monster manual, if you are the DM. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll just take a look at a couple of the creatures, and then we'll go back and I'm just going to explain how they've organized things here. Alright, so I got a Drow Shadow Blade here. So just taking a look at it, they've added proficiency bonus here on the stat block. Things are supposed to be adjusted in the stat block to meet a better equivalent to its challenge rating. Some of the things that they have changed in the book are things like the bonus actions. There's bonus action sections, there's reaction sections that they've added to stat blocks so that your creatures, you know, can fit that CR 11, even though it can only attack 2 times on its turn. The thing that they said they were going to do is introduce the spell casting, the spells, into the stat blocks as actions. And they've done that here and there. But in general, they have not done that. They've kept it the same. So you do still need to have out your, you know, your phone, or if no phone's allowed, your spells, so that you can know what Fairy Fire does at a glance. Now, you know, they could have made the stat block the whole page and really explained what each of its abilities do, the spells included. Or they could have made it a half page, a little less than a half page, and give us a small illustration. You know, choose kind of what you get, but you know, I want my combats to go fairly fast, a little bit easier. I'm not necessarily showing the book. So it's a horse piece, really, either way. But I like that they've changed the stat blocks up and they've made things a little bit better. Alright, so coming back to the table of contents, because I want to show things that they've done to this book just in terms of organization. The book overall, I would say go and get it if you don't have Mordenkainen's and Volos. If you have those books, you don't need this book. If you have those books, you're buying this book and you are getting, I don't know, maybe 10 races worth of content that you don't have, and everything else you do. So, you know, you kind of got to pick if you want it. It's not a bad book, but there is one thing bothering me. So the bestiary is sorted by creatures here. Alphabetical order, pretty standard. But one thing that they've done is, so let's say they have dinosaurs here, and they've broken down all the dinosaurs. They have all the stat blocks right in a row. Same thing for, I guess, cattle, because there happens to be enough cattle, I guess, in the book. So they've done that. They've not done that with the drow, but they have put all the drow right next to each other by simply naming it drow and then whatever role it fills. And they've done that with the Gith, gnolls, grungs, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing that they did that I do not like, and that they've changed from, you know, their kind of original setup, was separating out the demon lords. They've separated out the demon lords and the archdevils, in just straight up separated them. So, I mean, we're looking at Zariel and Zuck-Magoi are right next to each other. Now, in theory, yes, this does make sense. They start with the Z's, put them at the end. But when I'm looking for, you know, my players use the cubic gate, they go to the abyss, or just going to the abyss, or I'm trying to build something for the abyss, I want to have my demon lords on hand so that I know I can look at them all, first of all, so I can determine which of them I want to use, which one sounds the coolest or has the coolest layer. But now I have to go through this book and find them, you know, individually. So, I mean, here's Zariel, you know, she's an archdevil. But then, you know, where's the next archdevil? You know, I mean, we have Yanagu here, and then Zutmagor. So they're fairly close together. But then, you know, Orcus is way over here, almost 100 pages away. So I didn't really appreciate that. I wish they would have done, you know, the Demon Lord heading, the Archdevil heading, or just devils and demons in general, because they've separated them out too. It's not something that I like that they did. I don't really care for it. And it kind of actually sucks. So, I mean, we have the Alhun here, so it's a variant of the Elithid. And then if you go to the next page here, you know, that's where we're going to be looking at the Euthyrid. So those are two variants on the Elithid or the Mind Flayer. Why wouldn't you put them together? That's the same for the Elder Brain. It's going to be up here. Why wouldn't you put all of those together so that they're all in one place? So that when I'm looking at it, that's how they were in Morning Canaans. You flip to the page, it was a Mind Flayer page. We already have the Mind Flayer in the Monster Manual. But they, you know, they have them all grouped together so that you know if you're going to be using them, then that's what you're looking at. But here I have to flip back and forth through all the pages. You know, I can't have the Euthyrid and the Elder Brain in the same room, and if I do, then I'm flipping back between page 120 and 249. It's kind of the thing that's killing me on this book here. It's something that, you know, I would just have to gripe with. I already own Morning Canaans and Volo, so if I was using Mind Flayers, I would just use Morning Canaans, honestly. But that's really my only negative comment as far as the book goes. The book itself goes. All right, so then we're just coming and looking at the last section of the book. It's just an appendix of monster lists. Now, this is something that Kobold Press has been doing the whole entire time through all of their big books and everything. Sorting all of the creatures by their type, and then sorting all of the creatures by their challenge rating. And adding the page numbers. I'm kind of impressed here, which is the coast. This isn't something you've done before. It's nice to see that they have done that. It makes things a lot easier, especially when, you know, sometimes I'm looking for all of the plant creatures. I want to know all the plant creatures I can use. I can find them easily by page number. You know, I was just griping about how all the demons and devils are separated, but here's all the fiends, you know. So, I mean, I guess this is their way of mitigating that, but it's still, you know, Demogorgon's on page 90, Orcus is on 204. It's not bad in general. You know, it's easy to follow for the challenge ratings and just look at find what you're looking for. And even if you're going by environment, which isn't something truly new, but it is also nice if you're looking for, you know, a certain creature by a certain environment type. So I'm glad that they added these monster lists here at the end. It makes things easier for sorting if you're going by creature type, CR, or by the environment. All right, and then we're just taking a look here at the back. I think this is the first book I've noticed that has the updated Wizards of the Coast logo on it. So good for them for getting that going. And that's the Monsters of the Multiverse. All right, so that was our look at Monsters of the Multiverse, Morning Canaans, Monsters of the Multiverse. Now, you know, I've said a couple of times that I'm not ecstatic about the book. It doesn't seem to take up a block in their release schedule. Usually Wizards of the Coast release 4 or 5 books a year. One in spring, sorry, 2 in spring, one in about March, one about April or May. There's usually one in the summer. And then last year they did 3 at the end of the year, but there's usually at least 2 at the end of the year. So this one came out, you know, it just came out. So in January, it was released, the gift set, the expansion set, and then the book will be, you know, re-released in May. I'm hoping this isn't the May release. We just got our March release. As of recording, that would have been yesterday, Call of the Netherdeep. That's the March release, so I'm hoping this isn't going to be the main May release. I will be unfortunately disappointed. The whole thing seems kind of weird and iffy. I know Dungeons and Dragons is, well, Wizards of the Coast really has kind of taken on a lot of new roles, responsibilities within Hasbro, you know, itself. They're making a lot of money over there. I just don't want it to get cash grabby. Dungeons and Dragons has been my passion for plenty of years, and I would hate to see them just recycling, you know, material. Back in 3.5, they released tons and tons and tons of books, a ridiculous amount of books. I don't think I've seen a lot of reprints. Now, I wasn't, you know, paying attention to, you know, the scene, and the community wasn't the same as it is now. But I just don't want to see them, you know, re-releasing things just for the sake of re-releasing things or updating rules. I understand you want to update rules, but you don't have to put a price on it. You could just release the errata, which they do. To be fair, they do release errata that changes some of the rules within the books, or some, you know, misprints or miswordings. But I just don't want to have to pay for that, I guess. So, you know, I'm talking down on it, but I mean, if you don't have any of the books, this is a fantastic book. This is great. It has all of the races, a bunch of additional monsters. If you pick it up in May, if you're a dungeon master or even a player, it has, I don't know, 20 races in here if you're a player. If you're a dungeon master, this is great. It's got over 200 monsters, 250 monsters on the inside. All different kinds. Definitely relate to a lot of the stuff that's in the monster manual. You know, like I was talking about different mind flayers. They've added drow, things like that. So if you're really trying to expand a campaign into one type of creature, this book can certainly help. But like I said, you know, we'll see what is next to come, I guess, is really all I have left to say about the book. It's not a bad book if you don't have the books, but it's going to be my review of Morning King's Monsters of the Multiverse. Alright, and thanks for watching today. If you could go ahead and like and subscribe down below. If you want to watch my last book review, you can look at it here. My last miniature review right over here.